you want to talk about what? Do you want to introduce what you want to talk about tonight? Because this was your idea. I'm just as bad tonight as I was the other day doing the podcast.
That was only yesterday.
Was that really only yesterday?
That was really only yesterday. You're on fire this week. Okay. Yeah. So here we go. Tonight, get your apple cider. You got your root beer all ready to go?
I got my Virgil. Yep. I got my Virgil's root beer. We're good.
All right. Perfect. So root beer in place. I've got my apple cider. Let's go ahead and play around with Azure Data Explorer and one-click ingestion. So I'm not sure how familiar you are with Azure Data Explorer. I know we've talked about it in the past here and there.
Yeah, we've talked about it. I've looked at it a little bit. I cannot say that I have ever spent a bunch of time with it. One of those I'm familiar with. I've fiddled with it, but it is definitely not one of my everyday tools.
Yeah, I like to think of it, and like there's probably some ADX PM out there who is gonna like want to strangle me, but I really think of it as my own managed log analytics instance. So it's got a unit of compute that I control with it. I can put tables with n number of columns in them, just like I would in a relational database, and I can populate that with my own data. And that data can come from a number of different places. It could be streamed from an event grid or an event hub kind of thing. It could be ingested from blob storage. It could be static data tables. Like maybe I'm creating like a bunch of dimension tables to use with, facts for joins, things like that. Like it's just something that's there for me. But I think the cool thing about it to me is it's leveraging Kusto query language and just that entire semantic for interacting with all the data that's in there. So regardless of where my data resides, like if it's in blob storage as a CSV, or maybe it's in like Parquet files in Azure Data Lake Gen 2, or it was someplace else. It was on 1,000 IoT devices in my environment that then streamed their telemetry through to ADX. It can all be ingested in one place, and then I can query it with one query language and have access to known schema and things like that. So like I said, if you've ever done log analytics, should be fairly familiar as far as kind of the query language and how you interact with the service once it's stood up. And then if you've ever done VMs or other managed compute services, there's units of compute behind the service. So you're going to create a cluster. You're going to choose the size of that cluster. Is it standard? Is it premium? How many nodes do you need in the cluster? Things like that. Totally dependent on the amount of data that you want to churn. So one of the things that I haven't had a lot of time to get hands-on with, and I want to kind of play around with tonight, would be one-click ingestion. So there's this process in Azure Data Explorer. If you want to bring up a web browser, go over to mine.
Do you want your web browser? I'll bring up yours, since then you're not telling me to scroll. So let's flip over. All right. So what is one-click ingestion? Your browser is up and visible.
Gotcha. So one-click ingestion, I'll just read it from the site. It makes the ingestion of data easy, fast, and intuitive. So with one-click ingestion, it's a method that allows you to rapidly ingest data and infer the schema from that data, from local files, from blobs. You can ingest from CSV, Parquet. It can be ingested to new or existing tables, anything like that. You can even do continuous ingestion. So say you had you have a folder in ADLS Gen 2, and inside that folder, you are going to constantly write CSV files. Like you write one CSV file every 5 minutes, and it has the records from the last 5 minutes, that kind of thing. You can actually have it wired up to your ADLS Gen 2 account with Event Grid, that every time a new CSV is written, that through Event Grid and Hub, ADX is notified and says, oh, there's a new CSV file here. And then it can go back and it can read that latest file, egress the data out of it, and load it into ADX for you. So it's kind of like a nifty piece of functionality, or at least it sounds really cool. Like every time I've read about it, I've never actually gone down this path and done the one-click thing. Usually in the past, when I've created ADX clusters, it's been creating the cluster itself and then defining my tables with their hard kind of schema, and then going back and manually wiring up that ingestion process. So one click should make that significantly easier, right? Like we should be able to have a cluster, go find some data and load that data in, and then pretty rapidly start querying that data and inferring insights out of it. So there's a couple of things that we need to do to get this going. We need an Azure subscription. Got that, check. We're going to need to create an ADX cluster and a database within that cluster. And then we're going to have to add a connection to our data source and push that all through. And
Okay.
I think we'll kind of all do this with just public cloud. So by that, you know, like any data ingestion we do won't be over like a private endpoint or anything like that, just for simplicity and kind of standing it all up. So that's my hope, is we can stand up a cluster, we can get some data loaded into blob storage or ADLS Gen 2, and then we can take that data and ingest it over into ADX if you're game for it.
Got it. I am game for it. I'm interested to see how this all works. So I may have missed this. Does this like create the table? Because I see it, you can go into newer existing tables. Does it create the whole table schema for you as a part of the ingestion?
It should. That's my understanding of it, but let's go find out. So I have a resource group
Yeah,
here.
who wants to read documentation? Let's go play with it.
Yeah. We're just gonna like dive right in and go for it. So we want to create a new Azure Data Explorer instance and create. And we watch the little spinning things spin for a while. So I've already got my resource group. My resource group is in East US 2. So this will be our to the cloud cluster. So let's go ahead and get that created. For us, this is just a dev test workload.
So, right. When you're doing this based on, like, you're spinning this up. So one question that always comes up too when you're spinning this type of stuff up is, which region do you do? Is there any considerations in terms of region, like based on data source, or, I mean, I'm guessing obviously Azure Data Explorer clusters have to be supported in that region. Is there anything to take into consideration there?
I think there's a couple things. So clusters need to be supported in that region, especially in the SKU you want. Like if you're doing dev test or like here, if I choose a storage optimized one, it's going to ask me for the number of cores or the size. Same thing if I do compute optimized, like I'm going to get a different set of kind of variables for size of that, and then I can even select basically like the VM series that I'm up and running on. For me, for this one, a big consideration is, where does the data live that I'm going to be ingesting into Data Explorer? So one of the things that happens in every public cloud, today at least, is ingress is free. So if I'm going to write data, like if I want to upload a bunch of data to Azure, that's free. But if I want to download my data and I want to egress it out of the region, so like I'm going to go from East 2 back to my computer at my house here,
Yep.
That's going to be a billable charge for me because I'm egressing that data out of the region. So for me, like this consideration is, I want to make sure that I stand up my cluster and the place and in the same place where I want to read my data from. So if my storage account is in East 2, then I want my cluster in East 2 as well. So there's no inter-region networking going on, and there's no like region to region egress charges or anything like that.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yep. So I don't think we'll need anything too heavy. So we'll just kind of go with the standard compute, and we'll get everything up and running in 3 zones. So we have some semblance of availability across things. As a compute service, you can go ahead and do auto scale, but I'm in the dev test, so all I can do is click on that a whole bunch and kind of nothing can happen to me.
So that's that optimized auto scale versus manual scale is a dev test thing, not another setting that we chose or anything like that.
Yeah, so if I come back here and rather than doing dev test, I say like let's do a compute optimized small 4 cores. Yeah, we'll do a standard D12 V2. So now that I've done that, now I have the options for auto scale because I can scale beyond 1 instance. I think just for the purposes of demonstration, like I don't need a ton of instances out there, but
right.
I mean, this is only going to be running for an hour, so we can stand it like that just in case we want to play with it later.
I was just curious since we're looking at it. So dev test, you're limited to that single instance, which means you can't auto scale. Got it.
Yep. No SLA or anything like that. So you've got all your options here, streaming ingestion, like, you've got your learn more thing. It's fine. Like we're going to come back and configure ingestion later. So we don't need it on right out of the gate. If we did, like, then we could stand up our cluster, wire up event grid to it pretty quickly, and have it ready to go. We mentioned this on the podcast a couple weeks ago, but the other thing that you can do is auto stop your clusters now. So if you want to schedule start stop for your stop for your compute instances, you can go ahead and do that, right? That's just kind of standard ARM functionality that's now exposed through the cluster side of things as well. You can configure all your encryption stuff. We're going to leave all this kind of just as defaults. I said we're going to do public endpoints, so that's nice and easy. And yeah, let's see what kind of diag we'll kind of get out of here. We'll leave that off too.
So this all goes into a log analytics workspace. This is not like VMs, the diagnostic data is a storage account.
Well, you can pump VM diags into log analytics as well, right? So it's the standard kind of like AZMon diag interface that you see on top of everything. And if I was a good person, I'd put tags on here, but there's really nothing in this subscription. So
we're going to throw this away anyways.
Yep. We shall go ahead and click the create button and see what happens.
How long does it take? How long are we going to have to sit here and watch it?
Well, it's spinning up VMs in the background, but we can do a couple other things while we're waiting. So I know that I want to ingest data from a storage account. So we're going to need a storage account. Let's go get that created as well.
Do you have data we're going to put in it? Do you have any fun data?
We're going to have to figure that part out too. That's all part of the adventure.
Oh, all right.
So let's go ahead and put this in our same resource group. This will be to the cloud, not could, ingest. And we want this to be in East US 2 because that's where our compute is. We'll go ahead and leave this as a standard account, and we don't need premium, and we certainly don't need GRS, so we'll just go with LRS. Secure transfer, TLS, that should be fine. I think we'll just try and find some CSVs to load in here. So I'm going to leave Data Lake Gen 2 off for now. Like, we're not going to worry about HNS. We don't need Azure files. It's straight blob. Public endpoint. You could do all this over private endpoints if you wanted to as well. Like configure a private endpoint on the storage account, configure a private endpoint on the ADX cluster as well. But then you've got to have the VNets and the subnets and everything ready to go. We're not going to be here a long time, so I'm just going to leave soft delete off because we're not going to worry about it. Microsoft Managed Keys will be all set. And next, our tags. I'm not going to be a good Azure consumer. And this will go ahead and get our storage account created as well. So if we go back over, we can see that our cluster is spinning up, like it's still creating here. And because we did a cluster with multiple VMs, think like a VM scale set scaling up in the background behind it. Like it has to bootstrap all those VMs. They have to come up, they have to be configured, clustered together, like all those kinds of things. So that's going to kind of happen in the background. The other thing that we have is our storage account. And this is where we're going to bring our data in. So now we need to go find some data. I don't know how.
Multiple CSVs, or do you want one big CSV?
Well, I don't know how you usually go about this, but there's this. There's an offering out there called Open Datasets on the Azure side. I kind of ran into it from Azure Machine Learning. So there's a whole bunch of data that Microsoft has pulled from open source sources, and it comes in various formats: CSV, Parquet, things like that. But all the open data sets are built just to like, hey, let's go ahead and wire these up very quickly, like stand up a machine learning service. And then I just want to import a data set and just start working with it like rapidly. So there's a whole bunch of data sets in the catalog. There's New York City taxi information. Like if I go into one of these, New York's taxi, limousine commission, green taxi, trip records, and you can see like what the data set is, what the schema of the data set is, and you can of course browse to the original location of that data set, like if you wanted to just download that data from there and have it come right back out. So it's a good way to get a hold of I think a bunch of like CSVs or Parquet files, things like that, if you need them. There should be some halfway decent COVID-19 data sets out there as well. Yeah, here we go. So here is a big raw CSV. So let's just grab that and let's save it as a CSV locally here real quick. So we'll just save that down to our desktop. That's a nice hefty 293 megabyte CSV. Not too shabby. Let's see what happens.
Oh, that's bigger than what I found. See, I was going the other way. I just went out and started searching for stuff, and I found a CSV with a whole bunch of athletes from the Olympics and the events they competed in over the years with a bunch of data about them.
Yeah, you can find like all sorts of stuff out there. You can go scrape Wikipedia pages. The thing that I like about these is quite often,
you can trust them.
Like, well, yeah, sure, maybe. But they're typically stored like in a blob storage account already. So if I didn't want it in my own account, I might be able to ingest it straight from here. The other thing that's available to me is all of the schemas are documented for them with sample values and everything else. So I know all the columns in the CSV. Like if it was something that I had to create by hand, like it's at least all documented for me and ready to go. I can get previews for it. And if I'm using it with machine learning, like if we were doing the machine learning service, you can see that they make it super easy for you. They actually give you all the commands to load things up. Like if you're going to read straight out of storage, or you're going to do like PySpark from like Databricks or something like that, super easy just to go ahead and read straight out of there. And then they come in multiple formats too. Like in this case, I downloaded the CSV, but it comes in JSON, all linted JSON-L, and it comes through Parquet too. So you can kind of get it in any format that you want it in. All right, so we've got our CSV. So let's come over here and just create a new container. And we'll call that ingest. And from here, we will go ahead and upload our file. So let's grab that really quick. And this should take just a quick minute.
far back. I was looking through my Olympic data. It's 271,000 rows.
Yeah, I don't know how many are in here.
That one's got to be bigger because this one's only like 40 megs.
I could open it up in Excel. Let's see if this crashes my computer in the background.
Right? I just want to play with this.
Look, I got a beach ball.
Oh, you
we'll see if it stays up.
This would be intriguing because it's all the different Olympics. Like it goes back to, here's one from 76 and where it was and which country they're from and details about the athlete and then if they won a medal or not.
There's all sorts of cool stuff out there. Like I highly recommend, like, even if you're not doing Azure machine learning, like come take a look at the open data sets. Like there's genomic stuff out here, labor and economics, population and safety. There's a data set on diabetes, public holidays. There's Russians, open speech to text, like tons and tons and tons of stuff. Oh, Excel told me it was too big to open in Excel. So
yours is way bigger than mine was then.
Hopefully ADX can handle it. We'll see. Don't ask yourself what could go right. Just ask yourself what could go wrong.
That's why we do this live, so that if stuff goes wrong, you get to witness it.
Safest way to do it. Yeah, we should probably download a smaller one too, just in case. Let's try transportation. I like the yellow taxis in New York City. So let's do the yellow taxis. Go over there, 2021.
How about orange juice sales? I'm assuming that's what OJ sales simulated data is.
All right, Mortimer. You want to make a bet for $1? Do you know that movie?
I do not know that movie. Sorry.
Really?
Which movie is that?
You never seen Trading Places?
No. Apparently,
Eddie
I need
Murphy.
to go watch it.
Eddie Murphy, Dan Aykroyd.
I don't think I have.
Out.
Okay. Something to do after this?
Yep. You're very, very much missing out on things. All right. And let's grab a yellow as well. Oh no, I deleted my files right in the middle of upload. I shouldn't have done that. Got to be smart about it.
You know what? I wonder how this is. Although you just come through all right. Nothing like downloading massive data sets while we're trying to stream over the same internet connection, right?
Absolutely. Well, I also just clicked the wrong button in Edge here and deleted all my data sets. So it stopped uploading too. That's not helping anything. But let's go grab them again. Not a big deal. Great. I want to save as yellow trip data. Let's grab a couple of these. Just in case.
I was looking through some more of this documentation. Local file. Blah. Oh, so you can only do 10 files if you're doing local, or blob storage you can ingest from up to 10 blobs. So there are some limits here on what you can ingest. You cannot ingest.
For one-click ingest, yes. For continuous ingestion, no.
And continuous being like that streaming ingestion.
Correct. Yep. Yeah, you can basically run continuous ingestion up to kind of the throughput limits of your given ingestion source. So like if it's a storage account,
got it.
Think you have 60 gigabits a second of ingress and 120 gigabits a second of egress kind of thing. All right, so I got a couple of those. Of course, I deleted my COVID-19 CSV, so I got to go grab that one again too. Save as. Save.
I forgot to finish adjusting my lights behind me, Scott, while you're clicking through data. Just realized.
All right, let's pause that and resume.
There we go. Now I got glow. Ooh, save big on light strips from Philips Hue. Do you need light strips?
Do I need light strips? I don't know. Do I?
I don't know.
All right, this time we're not going to mess with it. And somehow I downloaded a 349 meg CSV this time, so should be fun.
I thought you were getting a smaller one this time.
Smaller ones are boring. But here, if you want to,
Azure should be able to handle 349 megs. The cloud is limitless.
If
right?
you want to upload, we'll upload a bunch here. We'll upload like 600 megs of data in CSV.
What else did you get? Trip data? Is that yellow? The cab data?
Yep, that's all yellow taxi data.
Taxi. What about multicolored Uber?
Yeah, right. There's a bunch of other open data sets out there as well. Like if you just kind of Google, Bing, DuckDuckGo, whatever you want to do around, you will find that Amazon has a similar offering, as does GCP, with these kind of curated open source data sets that you can just go nab and use as needed.
Sometimes you can even get them from other ones. Like here's one from Case Western Reserve University, where they have like U.S. Census Bureau data, National Climate Data Center, Health Data Gov, Canada Open Data.
Yep.
Cleveland, and yeah, there's lots of, that's one nice thing is there does tend to be a lot of open data sets from all kinds of different places if you need stuff to play with.
All right. So while those are uploading, we're going to kind of keep letting those churn in the background. Let's see what else we need to do. So we created a cluster, and then we're going to go to our cluster in the web UI, which we'll get that going in a second. There's going to be an ingestion wizard, which is going to be nice and easy. I'm sure it's all going to just work swimmingly. Let's make sure our data formats are okay. Yeah, like you can see here in the documentation, like as far as ingestion, the data formats are pretty expansive. The other thing that you can do with these too, so and I've done this with customers for streaming ingestion of data, is you can perform actions on the ADX side, like decompressing data. So you could upload all your data as zip files and have them nice and compressed so they're smaller, load them into blob storage, and then have ADX read those zip files out of blob storage. And then ADX can actually do the unzip and then take the CSV or the Parquet file, whatever's inside that compressed archive, and then it can load that data in on the other side. So there's kind of economies of scale when it comes to file size and what you'll be pulling in and out of your storage account or your source. You were asking about compute a little bit earlier. So I've seen one thing that kind of becomes an issue is quite often, I think most of the customers I've seen that are doing streaming ingestion to ADX, they're basically looking for near real time ingestion. So they want to run their source, like say it was a storage account, they want to run that storage account at its maximum throughput all the way through. So in the case of storage accounts, they have varying ingress and egress limits, all in gigabits per second, and those vary region to region. So it's worth going and maybe checking the documentation. And I was talking about data egress earlier, but maybe another consideration for you is how fast or how much throughput are you going to have from your source, like in this case, a storage account, to be able to get that data back out. Like you don't want to put it in a region where you only have 25 gigabits a second of egress when there's other regions that have 120 gigabits of egress by default.
Got it. So lots
and that
of
way,
things
yeah.
like that to pay attention to.
Yep. Yeah. The other thing I've seen, or like one of the other kind of, I think, stumbling blocks there is you have throughput, like ingress and egress, right? Like how much am I going to drive in and out?
Yep.
But there's also potentially considerations around IOPS as well. So in storage land, that translates into transactions per second, like TPS on a storage account, which by default is 20,000 on a standard account and 100,000 on premium. So if you're constrained by IOPS, like say you're doing a large scale ingestion and you want to ingest at like 60 gigabits a second, but you're not doing big files, you're doing lots of small files. Like maybe I'm just streaming logs like every 30
Right.
seconds off the server, and it's 100 kilobytes per file that goes up. Those are pretty small files to be storing in object storage. So you might be better served by saying going to premium storage and streaming everything into premium. And then once ADX has ingested the data, you can just go ahead and delete it out of premium because it's already been ingested. So you don't have to carry the high cost of capacity for premium storage. Like maybe you just use like lifecycle management, delete it after a day or something like that.
So just thinking through everything, and yeah, okay, no, I'm good.
You're good. There's a bunch of moving pieces.
Right.
It's kind of cool when you see it all working together. I've done a couple projects with customers where we've basically soaked the wire. Like we've run every storage account for ingestion at its maximum for ingress and egress. And in some cases, like customers have requested custom limits there, right? If they have 120 gigabits of second of egress on a storage account, they might want to ingress just as fast. So, they might get a storage account that has like, higher than 60, it could be like 75 gigabits a second or something of ingress. And they just run those straight through for like the duration of an event. And I've seen it used with sporting events. So for like logs around streams, things like that, like Cdn logs.
Okay.
I've also seen game developers that use things like this. For example, like somebody launches a brand new game, right? Like, and it's massive, like it's Halo or Destiny or something like that. And you have a ton of users coming in on like the very first day because it's your launch day. Well, you want to be able to monitor that. Like you're quite often like balancing CDN pops and a bunch of other things on the back end to make sure that people can like, hey, can they download the bits for the game? Flight Simulator launched today. It's 120 gig download. Like where are customers going to get that from? How do we balance that? What does it look like? And then as customers come on the platform, are there other logs that you want to look at? Like, hey, how long is it taking for, the new world to load? Things like that. Like, do you need to spin up more compute? Do you need to spin up or spin down some compute and have those kind of economies of scale available to you?
So what is the use case? Like, I'm trying to think through. It sounds like most people tend to do some type of streaming ingestion. Like when would
that's been my experience.
Would one click be more like exploring the data initially with the plan that maybe you'd start streaming it? Or
I think so. I think one click's like a good way. In my mind, it's a good way to say like, hey, I have a data set. I want to learn some more about it. maybe I just want to spin up a small cluster and take a look at it quickly. Like, I don't want to go through the overhead of configuring an event grid, an event hub subscription, like all by hand. I don't want to wire up a storage account. I certainly don't want to create all those tables and the data inside them by hand, anything like that. Like, I don't want to do like a whole DDL, right, with my entire schema and everything else in it. So I think it's like one of those nice to have kinds of things. And I'm a little biased to like the use cases. I think we've talked in the past like about the customers that I work with and the size and scale that like they're not using one-click ingestion. They're spinning up like thousands of cores per cluster on the ADX side, and then expecting to be able to read that out of like a single storage account at scale. And that's not us today, right? We've got some exploratory data. We want to take a look at it. I just want to see how easy it is and frankly how it works and if it could speed up any of my other workflows, right? Like if I can quickly create even like a schema through one-click ingest, like maybe that's a way for me to just have a CSV and not have to define that table by hand and write out the entire like create or alter table statement.
Right. I think kind of like, there's some things.
It's an accelerator.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a stretch to go to like some log analytics, or not log analytics, but like logic apps when you're trying to get like the schema for a JSON ingestion or something. Like throwing it into some of those tools, they auto generate that whole schema for you, and it can save a whole bunch of time. So
yep.
Yeah, that's definitely an interesting use case of just using one click simply to get that schema and generate the table, and then go from there to like a streaming or a continuous ingestion.
Yep. All right. So we've got some data loaded. That's all uploaded and ready to go. Now we've got to go ahead and get into our cluster. So let's grab the URI for our cluster.
Scott, remind me to help you find a faster internet connection. Watching that upload was a little painful.
For those not in the US, US broadband absolutely stinks. And yeah, I have the fastest internet that I can get in my neighborhood, which is 220 gigabits down and 10 gigabit up. Oh, it's rough.
Not 10 gig, 10 meg, right? I hope that was not 10 gig up.
Oh, no, 10 meg. Yeah. Sorry.
Okay. Just making sure.
220 meg down, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm stuck in like storage account land, right?
Yes.
Where we talk about everything.
Everything runs in gigs and yeah. Well, that
great.
No, I was a little irritated while you set this up. Like AT&T we have multi-gigabit internet now in Jacksonville. So they're like, I don't know, some places in Jacksonville now can get up to like 5 gigabit up and down. And I still am stuck on 50 meg down and 10 up on AT&T. It's like, okay, I get that some places need multi-gigabit, but can't we like expand just the 1 gigabit service before we start giving like 5 gigabit service to everybody that already has 1 gigabit service?
Yeah, that would be too easy. All right, so I got a permission error here. I wonder what's going on there. I
missed your permission error.
So I want to add my cluster in here. That's my cluster. And I say add. And it says me is not allowed to do the version show command.
Isn't that a blob? That looks like a blob permission issue, right? Like you don't have certain permissions on that blob
it's
storage?
just I'm just in dataexplorer.azure.com. Like I just want
wasn't trying to access your blob.
Yep. I just want to get into my cluster there along the way. So I am an owner.
That was giving you a Gmail address though.
It is, but that's who I'm logged in as. That's me. I'm the owner of that subscription. I'm Scott. Hi. So let's see. I want to do data. Oh no, there's not a Data Explorer permission. So Query data with the web. Yeah. That's what I want to do. Sign into the application. You'll add connections. We've already done that.
Doesn't say anything about permissions.
I don't want the help cluster. I already have the help cluster. I want to create a cluster. So we did that. Let's just read through and figure out where I screwed this up. We did our workload. Our cluster is up and running. We forgot to create a database. That'll get it going. So databases. Let's add a new database here. And this will be our to the cloud. I'm stuck on could tonight. To the cloud ingest.
You mean the data needs somewhere to go?
And we'll retain everything here for 14 days. And we'll cache it for 7. Doesn't really matter. Hey, there we go. Great. So now let's look at our properties there. All right, so now we have a database. Let's try and add our cluster back in.
Something else. You cannot connect to cluster.
Well, we can always connect to the help cluster. That's no fun, though. Why can I not do that? Permissions. I'm a database admin. Doesn't get any better than that. Let's see if I can query things from over here. Maybe there's just some permission lag. Yeah, all right. I can query things from over here.
Your phone's going to go off if it's not already.
Nope. I don't get those kinds of things. All right, so here's my cluster. Let's see if it's uncached itself yet. Yay, there we go. All right, so we got our cluster and we have our database. So now we want to ingest some data. So we're going to go to data. And we are going to ingest from
new data, right?
A blob. Well, I think we're just going to ingest from a blob. Yeah. So I think if I just go back here, I've already got ingest. I know my data lives in blob. So we'll just say ingest from blob. I'm going to create a new table.
So what's the difference between database tables and map structures? Like when you look at those and you have like ingest new data versus ingest from blob. Could you in theory use both of those, or do you have to pick like from local file or from blob or from blob container?
No, so if I just go ingest new data, like it's giving me all the options in here. I've got blob, file, blob container, all those kinds of things. But if I come in from the data side and I say just ingest from blob, and this is going to be what?
Got it. So it just kind of skips the step. It kind of like pre-selects that blob.
Yep. It pre-selects that source, but the rest of the sources are still there for me. All right, so we need a SAS URL to our source blob. So let's go and grab that. Let's go back to our storage account.
Do you want to switch to my screen while you go grab?
I don't care if anybody sees these access keys because they're all gonna.
How is it? Okay, so I have a question. Because I have not seen this before. Are you doing anything on your end to blur out all of those keys?
Yes, I am. Everybody should use the awesome AZ mask extension. And what that does is it puts that nifty little blur that you're talking about when I come on access keys or like my storage account name here.
Right.
Or if you want to look at my subscriptions, like you'll
Like
see
I
my
noticed it was blurring out all of
names.
that different stuff.
Yep. So it all gets blurred out for you automatically, which is pretty cool. Great for demos, Ben, if you're somebody who, say, is like a trainer.
Yeah. I did not know about this. How have you not shared this with me before?
Well, you never ask me for these kinds of things. So I don't know what kind of SaaS this is going to want, but let's just create like an Uber SaaS to go ahead and get at that thing. And then I don't even know what kind of connection string it's going to want. So it wants the account key and the SaaS URL to the source. So
love that when it just says it wants like URL. A token, but it doesn't give you any permissions of what it actually needs?
I'm sure it's in the documentation somewhere. All right, so my source was screwed up. It could not infer my schema from my source. So that's telling me that I need to go to the actual file itself. So let's go to my blob container and let's go look at my Bing data there. And let's go look at you. Let's generate a SaaS straight to that file. We'll just do it with our account key. Read permissions is good. Blob SaaS URL. Boom. All right. Let's put that one back in there. And then let's hit next. All right, cool. So I've got a 350 megabyte CSV sitting in blob storage. And like it was pretty much able to infer that schema like instantaneously.
Yeah, that was fast.
It didn't really do much along the way. But the nifty thing is because it's a CSV, so I think like this is where the power of one-click ingestion is I'm going to get that schema created for me automatically. And I know there's headers in that CSV, so I can say ignore the first record. What's my mapping for that? So this is like the durable mapping that says when you upload this kind of file with this name and from this source, this is what we're going to give you. So let's just go ahead and start ingestion and see what happens there. Like I would hope this goes kind of quick given that it was able to give me the schema so quickly.
So I would be curious, what happens if you want to, this would be something else we could play with. You want to ingest something like a JSON file where it's not necessarily like CSVs are relatively flat schemas, right? It's a comma delimited, flat across the across it, where JSON you can have like all kinds of embedded wackiness going on. That's an official technical term, by the way. Is wackiness.
Official technical
like,
term.
Would it
wackiness.
Figure out multiple tables and relationships between them, or how does it handle something like that?
So that was pretty quick. Like it's done ingesting already.
Oh, wow.
It figured all that out. So let's go ahead and close that. And then if I come back over to query, here's my database. Here's my new table. Boom. All set. And I can start to see that that table has data inside of it. So let's do our COVID-19 table and let's go ahead and just grab 10 random records out of it and see how that goes. All right. That looks pretty cool. So this is time series data. All right. So I've got confirmed cases by date. So let me say COVID-19, and I want to I want to summarize sum of confirmed. I want to take the confirmed case count and let's bin that into updated. So updated is our time field. Let's bin that into 7-day increments and just see what happens. see if that runs. Confirmed. So it doesn't like. I brought some of my stuff through as like strings instead of integers. COVID-19. What happened? Updated. Yeah. So confirmed is a dynamic field.
Got it. Versus a number.
Yep. So let's go to int. Let's see if that'll work. Yeah, there we go. Cool. So this is all that COVID data, and then we could go ahead and do something like render a time chart. So there you go, like super quick, we're able to ingest 350 megs of data, and I can trend cases over time based on 1 week timestamp, like a bin of 1 week, because I have those daily numbers in there along the way.
Nifty. So how many rows was that, Scott? Run your KQL to count the rows in the table.
COVID-19 has 3 million rows in it.
I mean, that's
a tiny
data set. Well,
yeah, it's a tiny table.
Depending on what you're used to looking at. Okay.
That's a tiny one. I was trying to wrangle some data today that had 680 million rows in it.
Was that when you broke KQL? I saw a tweet, I think, that you broke KQL today.
Yeah. Oh, that was something else. But
okay.
Yeah. Pretty easy to get there. So like it's pretty easy to get like on board with KQL and start to just infer anything you want out of it, right? Like trends or anything else. So I can do like, let's order by, actually, let's do this. Let's do the top 10 by confirmed. And I'm going to keep running into trouble here because all these fields are the wrong data type. So I'm going to have to keep casting them. It's kind of annoying. So I wonder if we take our let's go back to data again. And I want to ingest from a blob. And this will be COVID-19 take 2. And I'm going to put my same SAS URL in there. Like I want to pull my data in, but can I change this mapping? Yeah, so confirmed is, so this would be good to do, is making sure that your data types here are the right data types. So when you pull them in on the, like when you're querying them, that you don't have to do all that casting that I was doing along the way. Let's see. I think integers will be fine for all of these based on the sizes. String admin region 1. Yep, cool. So we can do that ingestion again, and then boom, that'll just go read our data and give us everything we need. So that was actually pretty darn simple. I'm kind of impressed with how easy that was. So you mentioned JSON data.
I have a JSON data set for you here.
Can you send me a URL to it and I'll get it downloaded?
Well, so I think we might have to do like a search on that and then do like a select all and copy and paste or something.
Why is that? What'd you do? You broke
because it's doing like a search format JSON. So you can't do like a right click and download. You click it and open it, and then it's just all.
Let's see what you gave me here.
Text.
Let's go through threat verification. Woo! That's a fun one, huh?
It's historical events.
Let's pull up a beach ball.
This is from awesomeopensource.com. Awesome JSON data sets.
So what's this data set called?
This is called historical events. And then you can go pick the language. So I just did English historical events. And in that URL, you'll notice that it has like a beginning date and ending date. So I don't know what I'm guessing this is like from the beginning of the time through sometime in 2015. So it's an older data set. But you could, in theory, go in and adjust that to make it smaller by setting beginning date and ending dates.
So let's load our JSON here. See how this goes. It's pretty small, so shouldn't take too long.
It is. Can't give you something too big. Your internet connection's too slow.
Well, thanks. It's good enough to stream. All right. So let's grab a SAS URL to go ahead and get at our JSON. And, ooh, cool. Look, like my table re-imported again. So now if I go back and do those same queries again, so COVID-19 breaks, but my take two table where the data types are right, all set, ready to go, nice and easy. You see it also formatted them, right? So I get like my culture formatted.
You actually get the numbers format.
Yeah, for commas and everything else like that. All right, so we're going to do data again. Let's go through just the ingest new data flow, just so you've got that. So this is historical events. And we're going to select our source. It's still going to be a blob. That wasn't pre-selected for us. Next, there's our schema. It's JSON. How many nested levels are in here?
Oh,
2,
I have no
3.
idea.
Well, so this is pretty cool. So watch this. So it's one big level, right? It's
right.
One big JSON file. I can give it 2 levels. So it starts to figure out that there's 37,000 results in here. I can go to level 3, and then it starts to break that out even more. 4, 5. Is this changing anything?
No, it looks like maybe it's only 3 levels of data.
Well, yep. So that's my date. Yeah. So let's try it. Let's see what happens with 3 levels. So that imported 1 record out of that file, as far as I can tell. So let's go to our historical events and give it a count. Yeah, we only got 1 record out of there.
So do we need to go additional levels?
Well, let's see. So So historical events, take 2. And our source is a blob. That's our URL. I wonder if it just can't infer the schema enough out of it. So going more levels isn't going to get me anywhere. Like you see how it just keeps adding strings. So I think there's something in like that JSON file.
So maybe that JSON is not a good test.
I wonder if we can break a linter with it.
Top 73 JSON data sets on GitHub.
So we could go grab like that same COVID-19 data set as JSON just to show you what it looks like.
Do they have that same, so you can download that same data set? But is it flat or is it nested? Like, that's kind of what I'm curious about, is can it figure out nested data and how does it handle it?
It should be able to. I think the problem when I look at this here is it's not really nested data. Everything's nested in one thing, right? So there's one result and there's one count.
And then it's okay.
And then there's all these events inside of it. So this probably needs to be reformatted a little bit, where you start at event, because I would bet if we search for, so event is really like the level that we want to be at inside that file.
And it can't kind of determine that it's set up that way. That makes sense, I guess. Kind of.
I wonder if it's valid JSON, like if we just throw it into a linter. That'll run for a second. But here, let's go grab another open data set just to give it a look. Open data sets. Nope. Nope. Oh, crap. Nope.
What are you breaking?
It's going to sign me in. Nobody email me at my Microsoft email address. Thank you.
A gray screen.
So open sets. Go ahead and search for that. Slam the enter key. Azure Open Data Sets. Let's just go back in my history. That's the easy way to do this one. So let's pick something else. Let's do population by county.
Well, there's the schema. I found that's the COVID schema though. That one has multiple levels. That would be a good one.
You want to try the COVID one? COVID-19 data lake. Yep. Being 19 COVID data. So you want to grab this JSON file, right?
As long as that's not too big and we don't have to wait like 20 minutes for you to upload it.
Stop it.
Not my internet connection.
Well, this one is almost a gig.
Oh, do you want me I can't get to that. I can upload it. Or we can go find a smaller one.
It'll be fine. Downloads go quick. It's the uploads that get you.
Yeah, but how are you going to get it to your blog? Where's the link for that download? I'll erase you. Where is...
Well, you could upload it into your own blob storage.
I could, and then I can just send you a key.
And then you can, send me a key. That's the way it works.
Which data set did you grab?
I grabbed the Bing COVID-19 data set because I like watching paint dry.
You just grab the JSON file. Save as 22 megs, 10 megs a second. Downloading at 10 megs a second. Where's the storage account? I've got one here somewhere.
Makes for compelling radio. Wonder if any of these are smaller.
Resource groups. Resource groups. Demos. Storage account. I do, but it's just... what's in this one? Can I use this one? Probably. Blob container.
There we go. I found a 10 meg one, so we'll upload that one too, just for giggles.
COVID creates a container. Upload. I have 500 megs downloaded so far.
See, my download was done quick. What have you been doing over there?
No, I'm streaming. We'll have to see how long my upload is actually going to take, though. I'm a little faster. I have a 50 meg upload. But I'm also uploading to YouTube, a YouTube stream right now.
All right. Well, I have this JSON file here.
Yeah,
so...
we'll use their smaller one.
And I'll let that bigger one keep uploading in the background, too. So let's get a SAS key, and then let's go over to data, and we're going to ingest from a blob. And this is going to be COVID tracking. And from blob, that's where we're coming from. Figures out our schema. So there we go. So that looks a little bit better. So like changing the level now doesn't do anything because it's kind of just properly formatted. So we'll send it back to one level. I don't even know what some of these formats are. Like, what's the difference between JSON and multi-JSON?
I don't know.
So let's start our ingestion and see how that goes. So that's done pretty darn quick, but that was a small file. But let's see how many records were in that one. So let's go look at COVID tracking and do a count. It would help if I just did the right table name. So there's 15,000 records, and that takes like a second to ingest, less.
Okay. But it just put it to, so how does it flatten it out? Because in JSON, technically you can have like multiple rows inside of a row, right? For all practical purposes.
Yeah, and maybe that's that multi-JSON bit. Like, I wonder if we go back over to data formats.
JSON L a multiple? Like,
So
what's the difference between JSON and JSON L?
So multi-JSON is a text file with a JSON array of property bags or any number of property bags defined by white space or a carriage return. Each property bag can be spread on multiple lines.
So I don't think that would really be it.
Nope. I don't think it would.
I don't know. Where was... Go back here. Where did I find... Here's the schema. See, something like this one. So here's the schema of... I'm going to go share my screen a minute. Although now you can't see my screen, can you?
I'll wait for it to catch up.
I can see your screen. Well, here, I can do this. Let me share it in Teams for you, since we still have that up too. So something like this, right? Where, I mean, you're kind of flat, but then down here, when you get down into, like if you would have, for instance, multiple authors in this particular schema here, or in here where you start getting multiple site spans, like that's what I'd be curious as how it handles some of that, where it is those multiple levels, and does it just flatten it out into a whole bunch of rows, or does it create like relational tables?
It won't create relational tables because mappings are one-to-one between a table in ADX and the source it comes from. So like when you're going through that data ingestion flow, yep, and you're coming through here, like blah, 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 you know, we pick our table name and we say we're coming from a blob and there's our URL. So you've got this mapping down here.
No, you're looking at my screen yet. Do you want me to switch back to yours?
Yeah, that'd probably be helpful.
Yeah, that would. Please hold. Okay, so now we're back on yours.
Perfect. So you've got this mapping down here, and this mapping is what's telling the ingestion engine how to take this single file or like this set of files in this folder that you're loading that all have the same format, yep, and load them into the same table. So it's not loading them into multiple tables. Like I'm pretty sure you could just do something with the API and spin something like that up. So let's look.
In the case of this
here.
one, would it be like loading a book title? Let's say, for instance, you're loading a book that has multiple authors and then data about the authors. would it load that particular book title one time for each author? So it turns into a flat file where you have book title, author, all the details, book title, author, all the details, and kind of flatten that out. So in theory, you could end up with significantly more rows because it's kind of taking that JSON and extrapolating everything out and creating a bunch of rows from it versus. Does that make sense?
It does. I don't know that it works that way though.
That's what I'm trying to figure out.
That's beyond my 80x foo. But let's pull team tracking. Great. There's my table and Ingestion Mapping. There's a way that you can CSV mappings. Yeah. So let's pull back the mappings for cloud ingest. All right. So I've got these CSV mappings out here, or I've got this JSON because we imported a JSON, right? We should have some JSON mappings as well. So let's pull up our Ingestion Mapping, JSON mapping, and then I want to see that mapping. It's got to be quoted because it's a string. So let's just run that. All right, cool. So this mapping, like these can be created manually,
Okay.
but this is what the ingestion engine created for itself. So what it said was, hey, we have this mapping. Like this is just effectively like the key, right? It's the attribute, the name of the thing.
Yep.
What kind of mapping is it? It's a JSON mapping. And then what it's doing is it's saying like, okay, we're going to have a column of type date. And then here's the path to that within the JSON file. Like what's the data type of it? What do we do with any transformations along the way? So you can see that like it is a path-based thing. So if you knew the schema of that file and you wanted to pull out just authors into the author table, you should be able to come up with the query that'll get you there, like based on the path for the level of nesting that you'd want to be at. But you need an author table, you need an abstract table, you need to make sure that you have like something to key off between them, like
right,
primary
like
key,
some primary key
kind of thing. Yeah, so you could go ahead and do that join and bring things back together. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. I was looking at your path to try to figure out what it would do, like if it did have multiple authors. Would it only bring the... Essentially, like I said, how does that handle it? Does it only grab the first author? Does it create multiple rows?
Well, you're going to tell it what level to like blow out at based on the path. So I like this is fairly flexible, but like the JSON file you pulled up as an example, like that's not one table. That's 30 tables all in the same file. So you need to find a way to extract each one of those individually and then pull them out over here on this side.
Would that be what your levels would do? Would your levels kind of dictate where you pulled it out, maybe?
Maybe. I don't know. You don't have that file like complete. Like that's just an example. So we'd have to find a good one.
That schema one? Or the schema that I pulled up? So that schema came from... This is where we need to find it.
Like I can take your original one that was broken, like, and if I throw that into a linter, like, you know, we can break that down to the level that everything was at, and then we'd be able to ingest it just fine.
So this came from, where can I find data access? Data set. So that schema came from one of the open data sets. I'm struggling to find Azure Storage.
You might not find it for all of them. That's the downside
The goal
over
of
there.
this notebook is twofold.
Because the open data sets are meant to download from, or they're meant to be used with Azure ML for like easy import.
Oh, here it is. Core data. Oh, I think there's the data set. I'm going in a circle, Scott.
Never happened.
Here's where that data set is. Maybe you can walk me through where to grab it. My big one uploaded. My 1 gig data set is already uploaded. So this is the data set that.
So is mine.
Oh, look at that. This was the data set I was pulling it from. So there's this, the open research.
Pop the URL in the chat here. But here, so while you're doing that, we can take a look at that 1 gig JSON file as well. So let's go back over to data and
Lost here. We can go back to your screen.
Blob. This is going to be COVID-19 JSON. And we'll pull that up. And so the cool thing, like, so that other one that we had when we had to, like, it didn't infer that things were integers.
Yep.
This one did. So there's something different about the JSON where it doesn't, like, versus a CSV, where everything was a dynamic type that needed to be casted. And over here, like, it just knew along the way that this is the right thing to do. So let's ingest that, see how long that takes. Wet the palette.
I think mine's gone. Oh no, I still have a little root beer left.
And then let's see over here. So you popped me a link.
That schema came from right under that volume and retention. So under volume and retention, if you click view the schema, that's where it shows that schema with multiple authors. And they have a storage account key down below. Like you might be able to just use that SAS token right there.
Yeah.
And that storage account name and grab it and see what happens.
Well, let's see. Up a. See if we can't put this together. So we're going to go here, and that's our storage account name. This is going to be HPS going forward dot blob core dot windows dot net /. Does it have the container name here? Oh, yes. So that's my container name. / COVID-19 temp / and then PDF JSON metadata.csv custom license PDF JSON. It looks like you've got to pull them out individually like this. Let's see. JSON. PDF.json. That. That. So I think it would be, let's go ahead and close out of this since that ingestion finished. What's this one? This is Cord 19 data, something like that.
Cord 19.
What did I screw up? Not a valid URI. So .blob.
You were denied.
Yeah, I wonder if their SAS token isn't up to date, or if that's not a valid file in there.
In theory, it has an end date of 2025. But
so what we should be able to do is COVID-19 temp. And should be able to pull that metadata CSV out of there.
Each JSON file. Oh, you know what though? So this is. I wonder if you have to break it up, because down underneath all of that, if you scroll down a little bit further, well, you figure that out. I don't know if you're still watching my screen. Down here, it does talk about that each article. Well, I suppose an article could still have multiple authors, but they do break that out into multiple JSON files, where each JSON file is an individual article in the data set.
Yeah, and it's not a data lake, so I can't read out of it. But
yeah, and where available, the full text data is stored. So yeah, I wonder if when it comes down to like JSON files, if there might be a little bit more work if you get one of those more complex schemas. Well,
you can totally do it. Just keep in mind that like a nested JSON file is really multiple tables, so you need to break that apart. Like you're going to have to
do it automatically.
Yeah, you're going to have some logic there to construct those mappings along the way. But let's take a look. So that other JSON one did load up, that 1 gig one. That's 3 million records of data.
So that's essentially that same table that we had with the CSV, isn't it? I think that was about 3 million rows too.
Let's see. So COVID-19. Oh, that one. Take 2. Just about the same data set, but vast difference in size, right? Because CSVs are nice and flat, and JSONs are
not. So you have like 3 times the size for the same data.
Yep. But your storage on the ADX side should be similar between like those 2 tables. So like dot show tables. So here's all my tables that exist. So I want to show table COVID-19 JSON on. So you can actually see like the size of like the extents on the back end. Because if you think about like ADX, one of the ways it works is it automatically shards your data across multiple nodes. So if your data exists on multiple nodes, it goes across multiple extents, gets balanced on the way. So you can kind of get a sense for like how big some of that, like where that data lives and how big it's going to be across some of those. So we want to see the extents themselves. So great. So now you can see here, I've got my extents. So like that table, that 1 gig table actually landed in 3 individual extents. And then you can see like how big they ended up. So that's the COVID-19 JSON. Like let's do.
And the original size, like, is that kilobytes? Is that what that is? Is that like 325 meg?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, so it brings it in uncompressed. It tells you like, hey, here's the amount of data I brought in, And then what I was able to squeeze it down to once it was optimized and stored inside kind of the KQL engine.
Got it. Is that
And the back
compressed
end,
size?
and the back end that's driving all that. Yep. So it's fairly efficient, right? Like, and I think that was something I mentioned earlier. Was like if you're going to stream data through and it's a ton of data, like you might need premium to stream it through, but then you can delete it because the data lives inside of ADX, and ADX is backed by kind of a cold. It's not a hot cache. Like you have a hot cache in the cluster itself, but ultimately like there's storage accounts that all your data is persisted in anyway. So like if I was to shut this cluster down, my data doesn't go away. Like my data still persists in storage, and then when I spin the cluster back up, everything gets rehydrated back into the cluster and I can read out of it. So that's where you get into some of those like retention policies around your data that come into ADX. Like,
okay,
how long does it live in hot? And then how long does it live in cold? Kinds of things. So you can kind of determine that too as you go. But yeah, I'm kind of happy with one-click ingest. That works pretty well.
It does. Well, that was fun. Now that I don't even know how long we've been going.
Too long.
Yes.
Live streams don't have tickers on them. Takes a while, but
no,
it is.
Don't.
It's too long, and I probably spent some money doing that. So with that, why don't we spin things down?
Spin things down and go call it a night. Since I've got a few more things yet to do before I crawl in bed. Yes, always more things to do.
All right. Well, like a good person who learned something, I'm going to delete my resource group here and make it go away. And yeah, until the next time.
All right. Couple weeks, hopefully. And we'll figure out something new to play with. And if anybody watches this in the meantime and actually makes it all the way to the end and wants us to play with something, leave a comment in the chat. In the comments. Great. A comment in the comments? Yeah. All right.
A comment.
Well, thanks, Scott. Thanks for teaching me all about ADX and one-click ingest and playing with some data sets.
Yeah. Thanks, Ben.